Hi everyone. Uh, Thank you for joining us. I gather that since I don't see the numbers of participants in front of me because I'm already on the PowerPoint, that we're many joining. And uh, for those who wish to see hear the presentation or like see the transcript of it in another language, there is a Wordly button that's on the top right of the screen that will provide you translation, which maybe is available in French as well as other languages. It will open up a separate screen, which you may not find particularly attractive, but for those of you who want the translation, it is nonetheless available through Wordly. Thank you very much, everybody, again, and I'm going to proceed because there's a fair bit to show. I thought that this particular topic, even though many of you who have participated in previous webinars will appreciate that it's not a new topic in terms of the things that I've been presenting or others have been presenting. That is to say, the whole issue of public attitudes about immigration and varying underlying, if you like, aspects of what's driving, in particular, the negative view or of immigration and or connected to that, the growing but now stable percentage of Canadians that are saying there are too many immigrants, sort of stabilizing around that 60%, which is particularly high given recent historic trends. But this has been sort of the stable benchmark number now in the polling that we've conducted and others have conducted around the extent to which people think there are too many immigrants. Since there's been lots of talk amongst many of you that I've had the privilege of discussing these issues with about the need for shifting the narrative and trying in shifting the narrative to address these preoccupations that people have about immigrant numbers and issues connected to that, I thought there'd be some value in situating some of the Canadian opinion in opinion around immigration in other countries that are immigrant receiving countries. They vary in terms of the numbers of immigrants they receive, but we regard many of them as immigrant receiving countries. And so, uh, to that end, I have been looking at a large international survey called the ISSP, or International Social Survey Program, and the Canadian edition of it, as well as the edition of it for other countries, to try to give us a better or view on how the levels of immigration are viewed in other countries. Now, I think all of us who follow the news here and elsewhere know that if you like, politics of immigration has been high on the agendas of many immigrant receiving countries that are, if you like, instrumentalizing conversation about immigration, and it becomes the object of much political, if you like, engagement, not in a good way, and is disproportionately higher in terms of its political impacts in some countries than others. Uh, since we have the opportunity to discuss quite frequently the Canadian context, I thought it was valuable to provide us with a view on other contexts, because to try to tackle this challenge in, if you like, in Canada only, without paying attention to what's going on elsewhere and how that may impact Canadians' views around immigration, very often puts us in a silo-like place in terms of our ability to address something that's not a Canadian-only challenge. With that said, let's cut to the chase, so to speak. So this is the ISSP, and I'm using the 2023 edition on national identity and citizenship. So as much as it may feel dated to some of you, I would suggest strongly that the percentages of opposition to immigration are pretty much in line with what we're seeing in more recent polling. And there aren't many international comparative polls like this that offer us the opportunity to do this type of comparative framing. I want to in particular thank my colleague Sarah Wilkins Laflamme and her team at the University of Waterloo that ran the 2023 ISSP survey data.
Use the full screen.
Oh, I didn't full screen. Thank you very much. I will do that. There you go. Sorry about that. I hope that didn't, well, I haven't shown anything yet, so it's good. So on to full screen. Thanking Sarah Wilkins Laflamme and her team at the University of Waterloo who ran the Canadian edition of this. Now, before I get into the data, I don't know how many of you received this online. I did, and I'm sure many of you in the field here in immigration, whether you're an SPO or you're a research institute or in academia, may have received the IOM World Migration Report of 2025. I thought it was a good description of, in terms of their attempt to analyze what's going on globally, which clearly their report is very much affected by public opinion surveys that they're seeing that have been conducted in the past few years. So what they're saying is that the traditional immigrant receiving countries are shifting from broader immigration systems to more selective models. So immigration policies increasingly focus, they're saying, on economic contributions of newcomers, skills and education, and labor market needs. Countries still rely on immigration to address aging populations and labor shortages and declining birth rates, but they face pressure to ensure that immigration is controlled, economically beneficial, and aligned with their national priorities. Hence, preference is increasingly being given to migrants with higher education, professional credentials, language proficiency, and skills in high-demand sectors. Right, so we're seeing clearly a big shift towards the sort of economically determined types of migration as being the preferred candidates in not only in Canada but across all of these immigrant receiving countries, and which offers a very significant challenge for narrative construction in terms of trying to address these issues optimally. If you're engaged in narrative in improving the narrative, you want to be able to focus on the aging populations and the declining birth rates and the demography and the whole, we need immigration to ensure that our demographic needs are met as your strongest line, if you like, of in terms of immigration advocacy. But you're seeing all of this take precedence over the demographics, even though the demographics and economics are very closely connected, right? Because the argument that you need robust immigration to offset aging does contain an economic dimension to it, but it's not something that is easily understood. So what IOM is saying is that immigration is shifting away from nation building and humanitarian goals towards more labor market management. Priority migrants include engineers, medical professionals, tech workers, investors, highly trained specialists, etc. Reduced emphasis on lower skilled workers, family unification, and asylum seekers. That's clearly what a lot of the data I've been also gathering and analyzing is showing for Canada. But this is the global analysis by IOM. Lower wage sectors still depend on migrants, caregivers, agriculture, food processing, logistics. Programs for lower skilled workers are increasingly temporary, highly regulated, limited in pathways to permanent residency or citizenship. Again, all things we need to keep in mind as we're sort of thinking about what narrative we can use as our counter narrative we can use to what's being said and spread out there by way of the discussion or conversation around immigration levels. Now, continuing, and I won't. This presentation is not about IOM, so I won't. This is probably my last slide on the IOM overview of the situation. So, immigration restructuring is linked to domestic political pressures. Hence, public concerns include housing affordability, infrastructure strain, and healthcare capacity. Governments promote immigration as economically selective and merit-based. Highly skilled immigrants are viewed as fast integrators, tax contributors, drivers of competitiveness. Skilled immigration is tied to technological change, aging populations, and knowledge-based economies. So really, the IOM global assessment sounds a lot like the type of things that we see and that we draw from the data that we've been seeing from various survey companies on immigration in Canada. Oh, there is one more. Economies still rely heavily on migrants in lower skilled sectors, as we said, care workers, seasonal agricultural laborers, delivery workers, etc. These workers are often admitted under temporary arrangements and precarious conditions, and many will face limited long-term security issues, restricted mobility, reduced social integration, resulting in two-tier migration structure, with skilled migrants welcomed as future citizens, lower skilled migration treated mainly as disposable labor. Again, very much along the lines of what we're seeing in terms of how the public opinion data in Canada gets interpreted and gets translated into both the decision makers' priorities and the way things are being emphasized and the arguments decision makers are using to try to persuade Canadians that the country needs immigration. Now, getting into the data. So here's where we stand. This gives a good overview of where we get situated in terms of also thinking about our reputation and our future, if you'd like, brand or branding as an immigrant receiving country, right? Which we like to describe ourselves as, and we are still an immigrant receiving country. Now, in terms of whether people feel that immigration should be increased a lot, increased a little, remain the same as it is, reduced a little, reduced a lot. You can see that it's countries like Germany, France, and Italy that are more like than other receiving countries to think that the numbers of immigrants should be reduced, right? And this is 2023. I would argue, and I can show you that this is not inconsistent with what we are seeing more recently in these very same countries. But for Canada, increased a lot is at 27%, remain the same 24%, increased total 27, remain the same 24, reduced at 49, right? So that's still below the 60. But again, what we need to keep in mind, the 60 benchmark I said about how Canadians think there are too many immigrants, the question formulation is different. It's on that 5-point scale. Normally, in the surveys that we do, and whether it's with Leger or Environics or Angus Reid or others, it's usually, and for that matter, IRCC does in their tracking surveys, it's usually either there are too many, about the right number, or not enough. So this is sort of a variation on that. But the bottom line is there's not a high percentage that are asking for an increase. So it's kind of a split right now, at least there was in 2023. But you could see that Australia is less. Canada increased 27%, still puts us ahead of every other country on the list. And for the 28 cumulative countries, some of them are not immigrant receiving countries, we're still about we're 9 points above what those other countries cumulatively were saying in terms of the desire for immigration increases, right? So just to give you again an idea of where we stand. That's not necessarily a good thing. It's just giving you a way to situate where we are relative to these other countries, which I thought would be of interest to all of us. So hence this presentation today. So for this next one, immigrants increase crime rates, which of course is not true. But and to be fair, there's relatively good disagreement with that in Canada. 59% disagree with that statement. But in some countries, France, for example, there's somewhat more likely than other immigrant countries to agree that immigrants increase crime rates, yet they're still below the global average. So the global average for that statement is 47% in agreement, right? In Germany, it's 54%. No, hang on. France, 35% strongly agree that immigrants increase crime rate. So actually, Germany is higher at 54%, as is Italy at 52%. I apologize. I think I put that in before I added Germany and Italy. So France is above Australia, Canada, and United States in terms of the extent to which they think that immigrants are likely to increase crime rates. The average globally is 47%. So France is still a bit below that global average. But again, those European countries in particular are higher when it comes to affirming that observation. Oops, wrong way. Sorry. Immigrants are generally good for the country's economy. So on that one, Canadians and Australians are still by far most likely to agree that immigrants are good for the economy. And we've seen some erosion in that since 2023, since this was done. But still, you're at 75%, over 75% of Canadians feel that way. Same for Australians. France is at 42%, so a lot more divided. United States also 55, 56%, Germany 62%. Italy is the lowest at 33% or thereabouts in terms of the extent to which they think that immigrants are good for the economy. And the global average on that is about 47, 48% that agree with that statement. So again, just to give you an idea of where Canada was situated in terms of that statement. Immigrants take jobs away from people born in the country. So on that statement, actually, it's again the level of agreement on that. France does not. The French population doesn't agree to a significant extent about whether that immigrants are taking jobs away from people born in the country. The United States is at 27%. It's a bit higher. Italy is the highest on that question, and globally 31%. Canada's at 15% on in that regard. Immigrants improve society by bringing in new ideas. So that one generally, again, you see in immigrant receiving countries that are outside of Europe, Canada, 67%, Australia, 79%, United States, 63%. But then it drops to 43% in France, very low in Italy, and Germany, 66%. So again, still roughly positive in terms of the idea that immigrants improve society by bringing in new ideas and culture, something that I think we need to, as sector and others, continue to push that message, which we're not, I think, finding ways to get that message across at this particular period because there are seemingly other concerns people have that are trumping that message. People born in the country can preference in jobs, housing, or healthcare matters. So on that one, it's more Italy again with the 55% that are saying that, which is the highest percentage, saying that people born in the country can preference in jobs and housing. Germany 32%, United States 24, 37%, France the same. So it's Canada, Australia that are the lowest in terms of that particular view. Which would some people describe as sort of a very restrictive view and embedded with a sort of discriminatory dimension to it. Now, this one I thought was interesting. I wasn't going to include this slide because a lot of what you see looks very positive, actually. There are very few people in any of the countries, the immigrant receiving countries, that think immigrants should retain their culture of origin and not adopt the so-called country's culture. Almost everyone is in the immigrants should retain their culture of origin, also adopt the country's culture. That's at ranging from 80%, Italy, the lowest 78%, to 91 in Australia. Now, that may be a bit counterintuitive, or as I say, or surprise some of you, but it has a lot to do with question formulation, right? I don't usually see the question formulated this way. I've been objecting for 15 years to the formulation of this question as immigrants should retain their culture of origin and or traditions, or adopt the culture of the majority, right? It's usually positioned as one or the other, which generally in Canada will result in slightly more people saying that they should adopt the culture of the majority as opposed to retaining their culture, when it's presented as something that's in a binary in opposition to, if you like, the other. And this one blends the two, right? So I thought that was interesting. It also speaks to the way in which we need to be doing messaging about it that reflects this way of formulating the issue more so than the polarized way that it gets formulated and the conclusions to which that ends up leading. However, as you'll see, other questions and their formulation risk undercutting the way this thing is formulated when we sort of introduce values issues into the question construction and the messaging that subsequently emerges, which I'll show you shortly. So, global attitudes. Hmm. Uh, Right. So these are I just wanted to do a couple of slides. And this is a bit more complex because it brings together the 28 countries, basically, many of which are non-immigrant receiving countries that are part of the ISSP. But I wanted to show you with some crosstabs, what things look like when you sort of take this big pool of the 28 countries and whatever, 40,000 cumulative responses, because some countries had 1,000 respondents, some had 2,000 respondents. And again, nothing counterintuitive, but it's good to know that here's the sort of way in which these issues get unpacked. So, not surprisingly, the people who think that immigration should be increased a lot, 60% agree that immigrants are generally good for the country's economy. Increased a little, 75% actually, even more, think that immigrants are good for the country's economy. Remain the same. Most of the people in the remain the same category also think that immigrants are good for the economy. But the people who want reductions globally in immigration, are, again, not surprisingly, less likely to think immigrants are good for the economy, and especially when you get to the ones who want significant reductions globally, are making that connection with, no, immigrants are not good for the economy, we need reductions. Same thing here. So again, we're looking at the reductions issue and the whole issue of whether immigrants improve society by bringing new ideas and cultures. Something that's a very important message that, there's a considerable need to continue to, if you like, hammer away at this message, right? And offer that reminder to people about the importance of the contribution immigrants make through new ideas and cultures to our society. So there again, the more you want immigration increased, the more you are favorable to that. The more you want it reduced, the less favorable you are to that statement, right? Again, nothing particularly counterintuitive there. So another one, number of immigrants countries should be increased or reduced. And the whole issue around giving preference to people born in the country for jobs, housing, etc. The more you want immigration increased, the more you want uh, preferences to be given. But actually, the ones that want it reduced a lot also, on the other end of that spectrum, for whatever reason, probably something to do with the composition of the countries and the extent to which they're immigrant or non-immigrant, also are seemingly more inclined to agree with that statement. So. Immigrants increased crime rates there too. There was even the people who wanted reductions didn't sort of go for whatever reason to the into the increased crime rates was not so much tied on that sort of global collective of respondents to affirming that stereotype, right? So, which was interesting. I'm taking a commercial break just to, before I get into the Canadian data, to advertise for our conference uh, that's forthcoming, the ninth Metropolis Identity Summit in Niagara Falls from October 22nd to 23rd. Uh, so that will, geez, that's an interesting picture actually. So that is not the area that if you're coming to Niagara in October that I would advise anyone to do any swimming at. Just to let you know, probably not the best expression of humor. But in any event, the call for proposals June 15th. We are getting a good number of submissions thus far, and a good problem for us has been that the number of submissions tends to exceed the capacity, which is about over the 2-day period about 60. The theme of the summit, the identity summit, it's a bit sort of immigration plus identity issues. With a big focus in this particular conference on issues around trust. It's actually called Restoring Trust. And we'll deal with issues of polarization, and we'll deal with a lot of the narrative issues, but not only the narrative issues around immigration, but the narrative issues more broadly around diversity, equity, inclusion, identities, etc. So that's my commercial break. Je peux là aussi mentionner en français pour ceux et celles qui sont intéressés à participer à notre neuvième édition de le sommet sur les questions identitaires de Métropolis, qui est au Chute Niagara le 22-23 octobre. Si vous êtes intéressé, je pense que plus tôt que plus tard, ça t'intéresse, c'est utile de soumettre votre proposition parce qu'à un certain moment, malgré les variations d'intérêt dans les propositions, on va le faire comme premier arrivé, premier servi en termes de soumission. Alors, c'est ça que je voulais mentionner. So now, we're continuing. Canada. So here's what the data is telling us for Canada. The number of immigrants should be increased, decreased. How important is it to have country ancestry? Majorities of the respondents say no, it's not important to have country ancestry, but you do see the variation. The Canadians who want the significant reductions are much more inclined, much more at 32%, 12 plus 20, to say it's important to be rooted in the country, right? The ones that are more favorable to increased immigration are much less likely to say that immigrants should be rooted in the country via sort of ancestral ties to it. Um, Now, next, how important is it to feel a strong sense of national identity? Well, pretty much across the board, that was something that was deemed to be important, whether you wanted to see increases to immigration or reductions. On the other end of that spectrum, on the side favoring reductions, the percentage that think it's very important to feel a strong connection to the country or be truly Canadian, so to speak, or feel Canadian was highest on that end of the spectrum, but not much higher. There's a general sense that, it's important to feel attached to the country, whether you're born here or not. Some things make us about the country make me feel ashamed. Uh, there again, there was pretty good consensus on that issue with about 70% across the board, either strongly agreeing or somewhat agreeing, or agreeing rather, that there's some things about the country that make people feel ashamed, right? So, yeah, majorities across the board in terms of the extent to which people favor increases or don't favor increases to immigration. Proud of the country's history. So, although there's some things that make people feel ashamed in the majority, as we saw earlier, in terms of pride in the country's history, majorities across the spectrum, whether you wanted immigration significantly increased, a bit more divided on that issue on that end of the spectrum. But elsewhere, majorities feel a sense of pride in the country's history. The highest sense of pride in the country's history, though, is amongst that group that wants reductions, more significant reductions to immigration at 79%. So that's just something neat to think about that probably in terms of messaging as well. How important is it to being a good citizen, to help people in the country worse off than yourself? So we've got to look at the bottom, very important in the red. And what you see is in terms of empathy and in terms of social conscience, if you like, the people who want immigration increased are much more likely to be socially inclined to or inclined to want to help people worse off than themselves, than the people on the other end of the spectrum who want immigration reductions and who are less inclined. Having said that, usually in these 7-point scales, we would cumulate these 5 or 6 to 7, right? And so if you accumulate that, even the people on the other end of the spectrum who are wanting immigrant reductions are still, if you accumulate 5, 6, and 7, are still in the majority, feeling it's important to help people worse off than themselves. So there's still a good bedrock of good social consciousness, even in that group that wants immigration reductions, and something we need to keep in mind again in the messaging on the messaging side. How important the government respect and protect rights of minorities? I'll be able to leave good time for questions. Big, again, disparity across that spectrum. If you look at the red, very important. 82% of those people who want immigration increased a lot, feel it's important to respect minority rights. On the other end of that spectrum, on the 7, right, on the 7 points, 7 on that scale, very important, reduced a lot. The people want reductions. 28% are saying that it's important to respect and protect rights of minorities. But again, note of caution. It's despite the wide disparity, right? Even those people on the other end of that spectrum, if I accumulate the 6 and the 7, the 19% plus the 28, they're at 47%. So it is sort of possible to uh, help those people who understand less the importance of protecting the rights of minorities to make that critical case to Canadians. Looking back, looking recently, and looking ahead. So just for this one, I wanted to just give you an example because I felt that some of you may tell me, Jack, this is data from 2023, not data from 2026. And you tell me that you're absolutely right. So I wanted to just take a look back to show you. Now, unfortunately, the International Survey Program was not available, at least this edition, for Canada in 2013. So that it was available for France and the United States. And so what I'm trying to show you in that regard is that the difference between 13 and 23 in terms of reduced a lot, right? You can see in France, 47% wanted immigration reduced a lot. It was down to 23% in 2023, 60% cumulatively in terms of overall reductions. That is the 32 plus 28. So it was higher in 2013 in France than it was in 2013 in terms of desired reductions in the number of immigrants. In the United States, it's different. It was at 43% in 2013, so 19 and 24 that wanted reductions, and it's gone up to 50% in 2023, right? So, and this is, remember, we're in the United States, we're still in the Biden period, right? In that regard. So, so it's the opposite phenomenon in some ways. In North America, we've seen the increase. In Europe, uh, for some time now, there's been this push to reduce immigration, and so it's gone it's going in a different direction, right? So, oops. Now here, I just wanted to show these are more recent from YouGov, which is a UK-based polling company that does do polling in the United States and Canada and various other countries. Uh, but in this case, this is just Europe. So again, keep in mind question formulation, how important that is. Generally speaking, do you think the level of illegal immigration into your country over the last 10 years has been too high, too low, or about right? So naturally, by inserting the word illegal into it, you're going to elicit a much stronger negative response, right? It's nothing shocking about that based on question formulation because it's making it's suggesting to you that people are here illegally. So in that regard, it's would be surprising to see many people say that there are too few people that are entering. So again, the much too high in the UK is at 61%, 50 in France, 42 in Italy, 57 Germany, Poland 35, Spain 56. Right? So the Poland one may have to do with some of the Ukrainians, I suspect, or who knows? I don't know. Uh, Although they wouldn't be there illegally, but it may be a perception. I can't explain why it's lower in Poland, but it's pretty consistent elsewhere. Now, they then ask, generally speaking, do you think the level of legal immigration is the last 10 years has been too high, too low, or about right? And there, even the legal immigration, if you accumulate much too high and little too high, it's still at 48% in Britain, 52% in France, 34% in Italy, 57% in Germany, 48% in Poland, and 42% in Spain. And that's for legal immigration. So the again question formulation is and the messaging that underlies the formulation of these questions. That is to say, what is motivating the pollsters to choose the way in which these questions are formulated? Because when they disseminate publicly these findings, they're having an impact on the public conversation around immigration. And so, is it a question of whether they feel that this is the type of thing that either policymakers or researchers, others want to understand or tap into in terms of a formulation of questions, given that, this is Europe. And so it's, going to be influenced by what the dominant discourse is in Europe. And if legal and illegal is the dominant discourse, then they'll ask accordingly. But and they're trying to also show, hey, see, there's a difference between legal and illegal, and look at the difference. And yet, even the legal is pretty high, which also could be influenced by the prior question on illegal, right? Because that may be making a suggestion as well. So this is the type of thing that we need to think about collectively if we're on the issue around issues around narratives and what type of questions we need to ask in terms of the public conversation and how we need to change thinking in terms of the public conversation in Canada But again, considering how this is being played out elsewhere, in terms of trends that we're not immune to. Now, finally, I wanted to leave with this. How successfully do Europeans think migrants are being integrated into their societies, right? And here again, they ask about the illegal, and they're making that distinction legal and illegal again. And so even the legal ones, so to speak, are still not in the majority entirely, right? So in Britain, it's a split. In France, not even again, legal migrants, the majority are saying they're not being successfully integrated, however one defines integrated into their societies. Italy, 49%. For the legal group, not successfully integrated. Germany, 54%. Spain, 42, 48. It's better in Spain in terms of perception. And Poland, pretty close, pretty much even in terms of that. Again, this is about the way the question's formulated. What do we mean by successful integration, right? We're not explaining any of that to any of the respondents. We're allowing them to determine what that means or doesn't mean. And that risks falling into all kinds of traps, if you like, in terms of locking oneself into ways of thinking about immigrants and their integration that don't necessarily align with what the reality is, but are building on people's perceptions and have been doing so for some time. So I also put in this other slide on the right. Europeans tend to see neither illegal nor legal migrants as sharing their values, right? So illegal migrants, most do share the same values. Well, actually, very few people feel that these illegal migrants share the same values, right? But the legal ones too, if you look at that second answer, most do not share the same values. You're seeing majorities or near majorities in all the other, in the same, very same countries in Europe, also affirming that they do not share the same values. Now, as I said, this is about messaging. It's about the capacity in this public conversation to, with counter narratives, try to modify the ways in which people are being led to consider and think about these issues. Uh, it's a battle, as I said, for now, that those of us who are of the view that immigration is vital to the country, makes an important contribution to not only our economy, but to contributing to improving ideas in society by bringing in the cultures, as we saw earlier in the ISSP, both in Europe and in Canada, based on the way in which the question was formulated and and people were invited to affirm a statement, came up with something very different than what they're saying here, right? So in other words, it's yes, immigrants make an important contribution to our ideas and our cultures and so forth, but no, they do not share our values, or no, they're not successfully integrating it. So it's this whole ambiguity that's being cultivated that by various influencers and decision makers that represents to me a big challenge in terms of what we need to be able to answer with, and or how we can modify that messaging to the extent, that we believe that immigration is important for the future in the country. But, again, as I've done previously, which in webinars and elsewhere, I've presented to a significant degree a lot of the Canadian data and all its sort of permutations. But I wanted today to share with you the broader context within which we are operating, within which Canada operates, as reflected, to circle back to what the IOM is telling us about these global trends that we're seeing that are very omnipresent in immigrant receiving countries and have been for some time. And I thought that that was a valuable degree or valuable number of insights that were arising from these surveys that I'm sharing with you today. Now, if you like my presentation today, then here you go. Give me a 5-star rating. Now, I don't know how you give me the 5-star rating. I haven't figured that all out yet. You can also give me less than 5 stars. Please, if you're intending to do that, direct your correspondence and your rating to christopher.surtees@acs-aec.ca. I want to thank everybody, and I'm going to take some questions. We do have some time for questions, about 20 minutes. I'm going to stop the share. There we go. I know there's some questions in the chat. I see four of them. But Chloe, I believe it's you who will be the moderator for any questions.
Yep. Do you want me to read them out for you?
Sure. I can also see them on the chat. Let's see.
Yep.
Chat. You can submit a. Hi, Nancy. Oh, oh, okay.
It's
No.
the Q&A function,
Oh,
but
Q&A.
I can read
Sorry.
them out if you prefer.
Where's the Q&A? Chat. Okay, read
More.
it out. Let's do it. Let's see.
So, Michael Kerr asks, did the survey also
Q&A.
probe or look into the drivers of the anti-immigration sentiments, or look deeper into the belief systems, biases, or perceptions that underlie and or inform the anti-immigrant positions?
Not really, actually. The best way to get at that through the survey is to look at how people respond to some of the other questions, right? So, and then just do those kind of simple tabulations to see, if I felt that the immigrants bring in I ideas and, traditions and so forth that are of value to the society, do I think they contribute to the economy or positive or not? The general sort of tendency has been that people are positive about the cultural contributions, are positive about the economic contributions, etc., and are generally in a profile of overall positivity, and the people who are more negative, which is probably these days the majority in Canada based on more recent polling, are more or less negatively positioned. But to be fair, a lot of people who are saying there are too many immigrants aren't undercutting their economic contribution as much. Uh, so I don't know that that answers your question. I've done some other polling where I've added open-ended follow-ups to if you said there are too many immigrants, tell us why in a couple of sentences. And it comes back to a lot of the stuff that we will see even with those crosstabs. So that when, sort of unpack this, those are the biases we're seeing. Uh, I would say that we're also not doing enough to study the extent to which trust is underlying a lot of the negativity towards newcomers right now. And I'm not talking about trust necessarily towards newcomers. I've tested it. It actually aligns with what IOM is saying to some extent that we're actually beginning to, or at least Canadians are beginning to distinguish between different types of immigrants in ways that they didn't do 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when I was polling, if I polled about immigrants, refugees, or different categories, Canadians didn't make the distinctions they are today. Whereas now they're being encouraged almost to by some of the polling and by discourse to say these are the good immigrants, these are not good immigrants, these immigrants are a burden, these immigrants are not a burden. Refugees are getting disproportionately affected by all of this. And as I said, there's some issue about trust of institutions and trust of decision makers. That's part of this whole mindset. And that's why, and I apologize, Michael, if I do this. And that's why the next Niagara Falls conference we've advertised for, which I'm hoping to get a good number of people to come out to sort of continue this conversation, is focused on trust. Because I'm noticing a lot of a big breakdown in trust that's having this disproportionately negative effect on how people see immigration. Frank, are statistics for the individual main Asian countries available? Japan. I've got to check. I can check and circle back on that if you just write us. I can't remember whether Japan was one of the 28 countries. Uh, Japan is facing profound challenges in terms of aging. Uh, and I think they've tried to address some of those challenges in a previous period with immigration, particularly repatriating uh, people from Brazil, right? Because there's big Japanese population that migrated to Brazil. I don't think it worked as they had anticipated or hoped in Japan. From what I remember, I haven't been there in a while, Frank. If you wanna organize a trip there, I'm good to join, but I haven't been there. And when I was there, I met with some of but this is 15 years ago. I met with some, if not more. I met with their demographic agencies, and it was in the sort of the mix of this whole issue with the repatriation from Brazil. I paid some attention to it, and but I don't. Yeah, I get the impression that they're very challenged and they're not finding solutions. They also have some labor shortages, and they've tried to address some of the labor shortages with temporary migrants as well. with whatever challenges that entails, particularly for the temporary migrants. Uh, I wonder whether the wording immigrants improve society, bringing new ideas and cultures. Yeah. So yeah, I mean it is a leading statement, but so are the statements in those European surveys about they're not sort of adopting our values or anything that is constructed with a values reference built into it. Very often is a bit loaded. Uh, so bringing new cultures will not necessarily resonate with the undecided or movable middle as a positive. Uh, well, it does, Nancy, it is resonating reasonably positively, actually. But again, it has an orientation to it, right? To be fair, and that's why, in this sort of, uh, if you like, conflict or conversation slash debate that we're collectively having. It is a bit of a battle of what comes to mind. What are you thinking about when you think about immigration and what you associate it with? And some of it, the irony here is we're a country with a very high percentage of immigrants and children of immigrants. That's half our country in terms of the what 2026 census will reveal. So it's interesting that in this particular climate, in a country with a very large percentage of immigrants that are, some use the term first and second generation. I'm not big on the second generation immigrants terminology. I don't think people who are second generation are immigrants, but they're still very connected to immigration. And so, what they think about and how they unpack things, if you're wanting to do a narrative that addresses that, you'll need to have positive messaging that's short and punchy, right? So, because it's the short and punchy messaging that is affecting people's thinking about this issue. Is there a statistic? Okay, next question. Liron, I hope I got this right. Is there statistical information of the participants in these surveys? For example, yes, there is. Actually, there is information on their economic backgrounds, the cultural backgrounds. Uh, yeah, there is actually, to be fair, there is. Again, once we start disaggregating on this thing and sort of get into the not as robust samples of subgroups, it may call into question, the extent to which the observations of a particular segment of the poll are strong observations, but there is information available to that end. I wish the statistics were recent, anonymous attendee, but still gives an idea as to why things are happening nowadays. Yeah, I mean, same here. I wish they were recent. And I'm going to be running more surveys going forward. So in Canada, and as some of you may know, we are doing something in France next week for Métropolis Francophonie Mondiale, and I do have meetings with some of the statistical agencies in France and the big pollster there and big research into immigration to see if we can do a Canada-France bilateral comparative migration survey. I mean, some people say it's better to do these with 5, 6, 7 countries. I can probably do Canada, US anyways, so to do some of those comparisons. But yeah, so I do agree that it's good to have more recent data, and we will be pursuing that. So may I ask where statistical data was sourced from for reference and verification? Yeah, Penelope, we're going to send you the PowerPoint. It's all there. If you missed that part, you missed that part. Okay, we'll send it to Penelope. Somebody send it to Penelope. The data set will be available online, I guess, right, Chloe? Good,
The
thanks.
slides will be online after. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to make some changes, mind you, because I injected Italy and Germany as in the last sort of day or so, and I didn't change the top line descriptives. So sometimes France gets the sort of negative end of this when it's Italy. That's was in 2023 is more negative. So after Penelope, it's anonymous attendee. Do you think the upcoming referendum in Alberta will affect public perception of immigration? My answer would be yes. I can't tell. I don't know enough. I see they got 10 questions, right? Uh, so it's something like, if I understand correctly, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? Right? What is your preferred uh, what's your preferred sports team? Are you supportive of Alberta leaving the country? I mean, I can't tell. I know they got like 9, 10 questions in this thing. So I hope that joke didn't offend anyone in Alberta, by the way, who supports separation. But yeah, but I do think that it will have an impact. Uh, we'll have to see. And what's interesting is that at our conference Niagara Falls, and again, I apologize for the shameless advertising for the conference. It's October 22nd, 23rd, our conference. So the Alberta referendum is October 19th. The Quebec election will also have some impact on our politics going forward nationally. It's between Quebec and Alberta. And there will be some workshops, and one of the plenaries will deal with some of these issues around the referendum in Alberta and the election in Quebec to see what it means for our sort of broader degree of unity in the country. So, next, it's a familiar name, Howard Ramos. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Have you considered the impact of immigration flows? For example, a rapid increase in UK before Brexit. No, I haven't actually, because I'm just sharing with you the public opinion data from ISSP. But clearly, out of the pandemic, those were issues. But to be fair, in those European contexts, when I sort of shared the numbers for France from before the pandemic in 2013, they're still pretty stark, right? And there were significant immigration reductions during the pandemic, including in Canada, which kind of rebounded to increase immigration, then pull back again. But again, there's a big study to be done about the pandemic effects on migration, not only from the standpoint of numbers, but also on attitudes, Howard. Howard, this could be a good project for you and I, actually. We could do this could be our book, Howard. The effects of COVID-19 on immigration in Canada and globally. So let me make a note. I'm adding it to my list of future publications. It's number 17. So hopefully, if I'm still around by that time, then we'll be able to do this together. Next, anonymous attendee. I am wondering if integration has to do with being able to speak the language. It certainly is for some people. I don't think it's as big an issue in France, actually. It's a bigger issue in Quebec than France in some ways, much bigger. But which makes sense, I suppose, from the standpoint of the demographics or demolinguistics. But in Canada, the government used to provide English class for refugees. But in Europe, I don't know that they do that. Correct. Yeah, I don't think they do that. The world's changing, as I'm sure we all know, in terms of the way in which language training is done with that sort of AI stuff and whatever. And so we'll have to see what all this means going forward. Uh, Sadly, Japan has gone down the wide-ranging, ever more pervasive and immigration avoiding robotics option. Yes, yes, Michael. Another issue which we'll need to discuss, the robotics and the tech and the changing technology and labor force. Howard, put that on our list. That could be a future publication for us too. Number 27. Nancy, yes, for me, bringing new cultures is positive, but many areas, especially the reaction may be mixed, whereas new ideas is short and punchy, as you said. Yep. Yeah, again, something we need to think about. I think too often in terms of our engagement in the conversation, we're trying to come up with something bigger and bolder and big statements. And while that's all good, it's good for us as a reminder. With Monsieur, Madame, tout le monde, we need those short, punchy types of statements and whatever, and need to be able to particularly make our points strong across a lot of social media platforms. Because this isn't only about where things are today, it's also about the future. So, next. Yes. Okay, next. Anonymous attendee. Is it the same person, anonymous attendee? I don't know, because I'm seeing a lot of those people that call themselves anonymous attendee. Does it include a sample from Quebec as well? Yes, it does. And it is broken down by region. I didn't do that, but because I was more focused on those international comparisons, but yes, it does. Good presentation. I have to go. Bye. Okay, well, thanks very much don't forget the 5-star rating. I got 5 minutes left. Next. I think that's it. Did I cover? Is there more? No, I think that was it. Chloe? I think I covered it all.
Yep, it all looks good to me.
21. I answered 21.
Yeah, that was a lot of questions very quickly.
Yeah, it's like one of these game shows, I have where the timer's on, so it's good. Yes, in March, as one new autonomous attendee has another one. In Halifax in March, we heard about the dip in the acceptance of immigration immigrants. Has this been considered from the view of racism, white European versus the dip in acceptance of immigration? Okay, so on that one, where do we send the 5-star rating? Very good. I like Chris. Chris, don't forget the 5-star rating. So again, on that issue, on the sort of issue, which is a complex issue, but the reality is that the surveys I've done are showing you that a lot of the, as you say, black and brown people, as you've described it, also have high levels of opposition to immigration. Uh, and so it's not, the binary doesn't really work that way, at least in terms of the polling I've seen. I've got to add to that, much to my surprise, very often at the tables I've sat at with persons not born in the country, right? Uh, who are often not only from Europe, but will make some comments about immigrants. And and I'm thinking, and I do sort of answer this, but I sit thinking, uh, they're immigrants too. And yet, when I put that proposition to them, the answer is, "What do you mean we're immigrants? We've been here for 10 years." So it's, I don't think you can cast this as an issue of racialized versus non-racialized. Uh, Even though there's some element of it, we need to be cautious about not unpacking it that way. Uh, and it ends up being a bit, if I may, reductionist because the other issues that people are evoking, whether it's economy, housing, and other issues that get evoked a lot, uh, are not, cannot all be seen through that prism, if you'd like, of whether it's racialized versus not racialized. But it's I would have thought that was truer in a previous period, but today it's just become a lot more nuanced and complex in terms of who's saying what and who's feeling what. So that would be my answer to the anonymous attendee. Hope you still give me the 5-star rating. Christopher.Surtees at acs-ac.ca. Chris, this 5-star rating thing may be good because it will encourage us to keep doing these webinars, right? Which you want to do more of. So, and by the way, Chris Surtees, he actually wanted me in future to start charging for some of these webinars, but we've nixed that. So, merci, Belize, et j'espère que vous avez appris quelque chose et on va voir comment on peut travailler, continuer nous tous de travailler ensemble sur un dossier qui est fondamental pour notre futur. Thanks for the lunch and learn. 5 stars, very good. Chris, chalk it up. I think we're up to about 25 stars if I accumulate the 5 stars. Oh, another good one, Chris. I think that's it. Merci, Sadiq. Apprécié. Fort apprécié. Ça m'encourage de continuer, même avec les blagues. Je vais continuer avec les blagues aussi. Yeah, I think there are, numbers. I think there are numbers, right? Anonymous attendee, as opposed to visual learner. Is there any chance you could convert the tables of numbers? Oh, into graphs. Yeah. Yeah, they could be converted to graphs. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Some people do. Yeah, my brain sometimes digests graphs. I like numbers actually, to be fair. But I do like graphs as well. But I find people like to see the numbers. I do, but it must be a little old schoolish of me. So, having said that, I like the visuals as well. I think that's it. Chloe, I
Lots of
think we're good.
people
We're down to,
thanking you for a great presentation.
our numbers are dropping as I speak. 80,
Yeah,
79. So that's it. All right, everyone. Have a
looks
great
good to me.
weekend. We'll see you soon.